it's not going to save or autosave until the combat is over. There's no way to save in the middle of it. When I was in the middle of a very large combat, all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, but the game ended up slowing down to a crawl. Like we're talking
Oof.
about like 3 frames a second or something. Like, yeah,
Ouch.
it's just like three. Yeah, it's just doing this. And so doing these attacks, one round of combat that usually would take like a minute is now like 10 minutes to do a
Jeez.
round of combat. And I'm like, "Oh no." And I'm halfway through this combat. Like, "Oh, I'm so close." Finally on the show today, as in many shows, we have a one more thing. And today's one more thing is a subject I feel is pretty near and dear to most gamers' hearts, which is about an acceptable level of bugs. So, not just the bug that I had here, but in a lot of the big open world games, especially that we've played, at least that I've played, you come to realize that there are going to be some glitches, some
Oh,
issues.
I feel like in any game there are some levels of bugs that you're going to have occasionally.
Right.
You can QA and get as many of those as you want out, but you're never gonna get 100% of those out.
Yeah. You mean QC.
QA is quality assurance.
Oh, okay.
QA testing,
Quality control, quality assurance. Yeah, I can see.
about the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's fine. Whichever one you decide to use, both of them are acceptable.
I like QT.
Yeah, keep it on the quick time. Anyway, anywho, in you see a lot of it in open world only because of the nature of an open world game. There's a lot of problems that can happen with them. But I mean, you'll even see them in Souls likes or in roguelikes, obviously. Which is that the more complicated your game becomes, the harder it is to catch every single bug and glitch that are going to be in the mechanical framework of your game.
Yeah.
That's basically it. But there is a certain point, I think, where we go from being able to just kind of overlook the problems with the game, those technical issues, to the point where the game is just not really playable in that form, and it needs to be addressed. So, on this one more thing, we're going to be discussing maybe some of those bugs that really are either innocuous enough that you just kind of get around them, they're okay, and the ones that are just absolutely not going to function for the game itself, kind of make the game unplayable.
Yeah, there's a big difference between a bug that is, all right, well that's whatever, and a bug that's like, well, this game is now broken and I cannot play.
Yeah. I mean, the most obvious examples are going to be when you literally have the game freezing on you constantly.
Yeah, freezing,
Played.
stuttering, the screen tearing excessively, stuff like that. That's usually optimization issues on the game's end,
Yes.
or on your rig's end, essentially, sometimes as well. Sometimes changing your graphics settings can help with that on PC.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I know I was recently playing Diablo 2 Remastered,
Oh.
because I did pick it up on sale. I was
Yeah.
telling you, but and I was like, wow, this is really stuttering a lot. And I was like, hold on, what if I change my screen resolution?
Hmm.
And because my desktop was natively set to 4K, and I was like, all right, well, I don't need it 4K. Let's try it in 2K? 2K. So I downscaled to 2K again, and then I was like, all right, let's try it. And I was like, oh, this runs smooth as fuck now.
Yeah. 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 And yeah, that's just a lot of those issues can, if you play around with the settings, they can usually, get settled. Especially in the era where we have things like ray tracing, and that has a tendency to mess with the memory.
Yeah, that takes a lot of GPU.
Yeah. In fact, if you go and watch like Spiff do some of the glitches that he talks about, one of the ways that you can do it in some of those games is by creating a program that just ties up your memory entirely,
Oh, yeah.
so that it slows the memory down enough that you can like either quit out of the game before something happens to duplicate items, things like that. It's an exploit essentially.
Yes. Those are just machine programs that are designed to just like ramp up your RAM and CPU usage to slow the game down so far that you can just make it do things that it's not supposed to do.
Yeah,
Because it's like basically it's like when you play Magic the Gathering, you're like, all right, I'm gonna put a spell in the stack and another spell in the stack, and now all these are going to resolve.
yeah,
Because you're
immediately.
basically the game is like, all right, well, all of these things happen at the same time
Right.
because you normally in real time the game would be like, all right, we can calculate this fast enough.
Yeah.
But if you tie up all your system resources enough that it can't, it's like, all right, well now I have to calculate all these things before it like does it.
Yeah, it's you can usually do it when it comes to autosave features. That's a really good one, because if it needs to like copy an item, and it starts by actually saving the item where it's copied to, and then saves it where it saves that it has been taken out of the inventory, but you cut it off before it does that. Sort of like actually, since we were talking about Pokemon, there was a whole thing where you could duplicate Pokemon over the sharing cable
Over
in
the
the
link
original.
cable, yeah,
Yeah, the link
because
cable.
you'd do it and you'd turn off your system before like you sent it or whatever like that, like during the send, but before you received theirs or whatever. I don't remember, but yes.
I think I successfully did it with one of my friends' games, and it was that whole thing like when it goes into transition after after it's seen like over on the other one, if you disconnect it from the original cable and then you disconnect it from the other one once the transfer goes through, it still says that your Pokemon is on the original, but it will also now show it in the second one, so you can duplicate it that way.
Right.
So, but those are intentional. What we're really getting to is the ones that you're not intentionally trying to manipulate or exploit, the ones that you just have to work around. And those are usually annoying. I've had several times where I was playing games and you end up trapped in a wall. That's pretty much an ender for me.
Yeah.
There's just so much you can do once you get trapped in a wall. And in ones that I didn't expect, like Plague Tale. Of all places, I remember there's this weird thing where, I'm just going up a castle in Plague Tale Innocence,
As one
and
does.
yeah, yeah, you're going up the stairs of the castle, and all of a sudden I'm actually like I phased through the steps. I guess there was like a tear, or yeah, there was the hitbox was like through. I get under the stairs, and now I'm like behind the framework of the castle, like underneath the staircase, and I had to restart because there was no way for me to get back. Sometimes I'm able to like get back into the game world itself instead of being outside the boundaries, but this time I couldn't do it. It was not
Yeah, it's
possible.
definitely not so fun when you have big glaring issues where you can tear through the physical model of the world and get below the scenery. And sometimes it's like, okay, cool, you can explore a little bit, but it's like if you cannot get back, or if it's a game that has an autosave feature and you can no longer get back, it's like, all right, well, that is a game breaking thing.
Yeah, especially if it
Um,
only uses autosaves and it autosaves while you're in there.
I assume Plague Tale did this.
No, no, because
Oh,
it will do well, it would allow you to do manual saves, but it would also autosave you at the beginning of chapters.
okay. See, that's where the feature in MMOs, for instance, usually is the unstuck feature.
Yeah,
For those games where it's like, all right, we're gonna just, if you're stuck, use this feature. It will like basically teleport you to the nearest graveyard, essentially, or whatever. It's some place that's nearby that's not somehow stuck. And
right.
it's pretty hard to get stuck in those games a lot of times, especially like the bigger ones that are well done. But the feature is still there so that you don't have to write a ticket and be like, I need support. It's like,
Right.
this can do it for you. Don't tie up our support with just moving your character.
Yeah, exactly. And that is one of those reactions where the designers are like, we understand that this is going to happen. The game
Yeah.
world is very large. There's a lot of assets in there, and it's almost impossible to get everything. So we're going to create a mechanic, essentially like the unstuck feature, to work around that because we know that it's a common problem that we just
Yeah.
can't account for every single time.
Right. Every nook and cranny cannot be investigated.
Right, exactly. When it came to Skyrim, which is always a good example for this, because it is still one of the most iconic video games of all time, but is also just rife with issues.
No
What
way.
one of the things I realized was so very vital is that when you end up stuck on the terrain or you can't get out, luckily there's a fast travel feature, and so as
Right.
long as you can open up your map and you can go to any other place, you can just fast travel to some other place and it resets you where you need to
Or
be.
if you're on PC, just open up the console and do a COC command.
Yeah, yeah, whatever you need to do. Whatever you need to
So
do.
it's really hard. The other thing with that, if you don't want to open up and cheat entirely by COC commands and you can't fast travel, or if you just whatever, you can, generally speaking, break the game a bit with quick saves and quick loads
Oh,
occasionally.
yes. Yes, that's how you can phase through walls if you actually wanted to.
And to
Certain
sequence
areas.
break the game, generally.
Yeah, yeah. The only times that I've actually seen that used as an exploit, I think, is like when a mitten squad will have to do a challenge
Yeah.
video and get through a situation that you really can't get through otherwise.
Yeah, I've seen him do that quite a bit.
Yeah, especially if you have 2 points on a map that are close enough together that you can just essentially just quick save scum your way through the feature.
Yeah, it's fine. It's
happens
fine.
happens in Fallout a lot. You just kind of go along with it. So those are the real big problem ones where either your game freezes, your game closes out, they corrupt your save file, you get into a position where you can't get out. Those are things that are just not going to work because your game's gonna break. You can't enjoy the game if that happens. Now, there's the part where we'd have to talk about glitches that are not necessarily game breaking, but might keep you from playing.
Well, I can also think of some that aren't game breaking and you don't really mind, but are a bit irritating as well. And those to me are UI,
Okay.
UI UX user interface bugs where perhaps text is cut off
Oh,
and
yeah.
spots is not optimized or does not fit where it's supposed to. I was playing Lost Ark. I haven't really played in a while. I'm probably not going to go back to it at this point just because
Bored.
it's very pay to win at this point.
Mm-hmm.
There's no more vertical progression. It's mostly horizontal, and I got bored of it. So, horizontal's fine if it's fun. Anywho's, so one of the things with that, because it's a Korean game and it's brought over here, and so the English is sometimes text will run off out of the boxes, out of the places it needs to be. So it's like, all right, well, this now is cut off, and I have no idea what the rest of this sentence says, and that's annoying, but not game breaking.
Yeah.
You can generally infer the rest of the information if you need to.
Sure.
But sometimes you're like, all right, well, it says this thing here, and it's cut off here, but it keeps going past, and it's like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Things like that are UI, UX, and text dialogue are not really game breaking typically.
No. One of the ones that I found was our good old friend Cyberpunk. If you are looking at item descriptions, for some if you're in the right spot when you're in inventory, the description of the item will be like above the visual part of the screen. If you're comparing it to another item, and
I don't like
annoying.
it when games do stuff like that. It's like, all right, well, the text is now going down off the screen. It's like, listen, You don't need to necessarily have the text box pop up based on the where the icon is in my inventory. Just have it generally pop up in the same spot for everything, and it's fine.
Yeah, yeah. I see that on far too many games where they really insist on like keeping it like near where your pointer is at the time or whatever, and it's like you really don't need to do that. You can just
No.
you can have a spot that says currently equipped and the item that you're looking at, especially for comparisons, because it
Yeah.
pops up. It just takes up so much room where it is, and keeps me from seeing any other items that are around it as well.
Right.
Um,
And that is annoying.
it is annoying. One that I don't necessarily think is game breaking, but is definitely annoying to the point where I might need to reload a game is if suddenly you get slowdown. One time I was playing Wasteland 3, which is a great game, but there's this whole thing where you can't save in the middle of combats. So if you're in the middle of a combat, it's not going to save or autosave until the combat is over. There's no way to save in the middle of it. When I was in the middle of a very large combat, all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, but the game ended up slowing down to a crawl. Like we're talking about like 3 frames a second or something.
Ouch.
Like yeah, it's just like 3. Yeah, it's just doing this. And so doing these attacks, one round of combat that usually would take like a minute is now like 10 minutes to do a round of combat. And I'm like, oh no, and I'm halfway through this combat. Like oh, I'm so close. I'm just so close, and I don't know if I want to stop. If I can finish this up. But it gets to the point where I'm like, okay, now I'm just waiting. It's not my hardware. My hardware's fine. But the game has just decided that it's like running low on memory for whatever this is. And now it's deciding that it doesn't want to do this anymore. So
Right.
I had to reload from what my previous save was, go back to the beginning of the combat, or whatever I had for an autosave. I think it was further back than that. Because although the game wasn't broken, it sure as hell was broken enough for me to the point where it was not going to work. I can't do that. Those slowdowns and optimization issues, optimization especially with long load screens when it does not require those long load screens because it has not been properly optimized, are just, I find them more annoying now as I get older than I used to, because I sit there and I see some of the games that I play now. It's like, oh yeah, these are going to be pretty easy. They're processor light. I kind of figured, they're processor like indie games. They're not big games. And then when the loading screen takes forever, I'm like, no one did optimization on this at all. And I don't know why does it take so long for me to go from one transition screen to another? There was a game that I played that was an isometric one, and I want to say that it was it Deadfire? No, it was the game that came before Deadfire. Now I can't remember what it was called. I'll think of it. Don't worry. I'll splice it in later. But it was, for all intents, it was very good, kind of like Baldur's Gate. But there were so many screens for transitions that I would have to, go into a town. There's a loading screen to get into this section of town. Then I transfer over. It takes me less time to go through this area to the next loading screen, to the next part of the area. And I sat there thinking to myself, why can't I just automatically go to these areas?
Right.
And then the worst part is that you enter into a new area every time I go through a door. Now I'm going through a door into a tavern. There was one part where I was like, in order to just go back from completing a quest to the place that the quest giver was so that I can turn it in, I had to go through 7 load screens to get from one to another because there was no other way to fast travel there. Each one of those load screens was a good minute. So, and the actual playtime I had was probably about 30 seconds. Just like here to here, load screen, here to here, load screen, here to here. And I sit there and I kind of go, there was a way you could have optimized this. I could have
Right.
just jumped closer, or they could have done what they did with like Original Sin, which is just make big maps that are just the whole map. So once it's loaded, I'm probably not going to have to do individual load screens.
Yeah.
But those are technical problems, but I feel like they do kind of fall into optimization issues and glitches, because I don't think it's the gaming experience that the developers really intended at the front.
Right.
I don't think there's a lot of game designers that say, I want my players to just be in a load screen for the entire game.
I hope not.
I certainly hope not, unless that's like one of those Eternal Darkness things where they do it intentionally to make you freak out. So there are a few different mechanics where it's just annoying, and I want to stop. And then there are just the weird ones.
There's always weird ones.
There are just the weird ones where people are just sitting up on the back of chairs, or just like hovering out off in the ceiling, or you see particle effects. That's a common one too.
Right.
An explosion happens, and then there are just particle effects just in the air that just freeze
It's
in place.
forever. It's dust motes.
Just
Except explosions.
giant glowing dust motes in the sky. Those are... I've just learned to overlook any of that, to the point where I don't necessarily even notice it. It's very rare that I, like, make a note of it. I only think about it when I go back and think about it.
Yeah.
Where, people are just doing something weird, or what did I just play? I went to Skyrim for a second because I got bored, and then I didn't play very long because I was still bored. But I noticed that there was a part of my helmet that was supposed to go down to the character model, but it was clear, so I could see through my own head, just to kind of get an idea that there's nothing going on in there. Just I could see through my helmet all the way to the other side. Those are ones that I just note, and I just kind of go, meh, doesn't really affect anything about my game, so I'm not going to worry about it. It's not taken away from my time. But I think mostly it's user interface stuff that gets a little annoying, and I can overlook a lot of it. I've just kind of gotten used to it over the course of time. Do you think that there's any kind of like a magic number to hit in terms of we've eliminated X number of glitches, we can ship this?
I'd say probably like at least 80%.
Yeah.
If you've eliminated 80% of the bugs and glitches from your game, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's supposed to be higher, but
I mean, if it's Bethesda, if they can do at least 10%.
yeah, if they can do at least 10%,
that would be great. That would have helped out Fallout 76 tremendously.
It would have.
It really would have. Actually, one of the things that I do consider game breaking happened in 76, which is that the servers keep crashing. Because if you're in an online game only, and the servers keep crashing, I keep getting jetted out of my game. And it doesn't save all of my stuff. I hated that. So I can accept... I guess the takeaway is I can accept that there are going to be bugs in games. It's inevitable. It happens. We get that. But you would... At least I hope that there's enough quality control going on that they will make it playable and make me not want to throw my controller across the room.
What? No, you've got to.
You got to. Yeah. We'll just send the book out saying "The Wizard." It's great.
It's great. It's fine. This is
It's
fine.
it's great. It's 16 times the detail.
That's a lot of detail.
It was not enough at the same time.
Also, not enough.
Also not enough.